Hello, everybody, and welcome to TVE versus Marvel and DC, the TV enthusiast video cast, where we discuss the interconnected Marvel Cinematic Universe on television, as well as the DC TV universe, or as we like to call it, the Arrowverse. So we're going to be starting off today by talking about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Season 3, Episode 8, Many Heads, One Tail. So this episode focused heavily on connecting a lot of the kind of loose story threads that were going on this season. Will, you were talking before about how these were all being brought together. Do you have anything else you want to say about it, or?
Well, I mean, it's interesting how they brought everything together, and so neatly too. It's like you had this whole season. You had several seemingly disparate plot threads. You had the plot about the monolith and this other planet with this thing on it. Then you had the ongoing Inhumans plot, which was a continuation from last season. And then you had the even more ongoing Hydra plot with Ward. And all three of these plots seem to be entirely separate from each other until this episode, where they seem to connect them all together like so neatly. I was like blown away.
Through the powers of Booth.
Right?
Yeah.
Who really should, the character should be named Powers Booth as well as the actor.
Yeah.
Him and Nick Blood. Just
Yeah.
use their real names.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought that to me was the most impressive thing about the episode, because I didn't necessarily expect them to intersect, and I didn't even necessarily feel like, oh, they all need to intersect for this to go somewhere, but it's like you get the impression the writers had this plan from the start, and this is the moment where they just went, oh, look, cool, it all ties in together, and it's like, oh, that makes things even more interesting.
Yeah, it does.
So the really cool thing is we found out in this episode that this presence on the other planet, this death-like presence, seems to be a very old Inhuman, dates back centuries, I guess, that is tied to the foundation of Hydra before it was Hydra.
Yeah. Apparently, according to Powers Booth, Hydra's goal is this thing is supposed to rule the Earth. And so their ultimate goal is to get this thing off of its planet that it's stuck on and onto Earth so that it can take its rightful place and rule.
So I'll admit my first thought was, oh, so it's the Inhuman equivalent of Apocalypse then.
Yeah.
But that's okay, I get it. But
It's Armageddon.
And my second thought is, I think maybe Will is going to turn out to maybe be it, and not the hooded figure, or Will is like somehow a manifestation of it or something, because we still don't know what.
Or it's
Yeah,
all the same thing. The will, the manifestation, all that's the same kind of entity.
I'm really hoping that we are going to find out that maybe Simmons' story about what happened there was an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
Well, that would be cool.
More going on there than we knew.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, I don't trust Will fully. You know, there is still a lot of stuff to be explored about that. And
Something about that name is untrustworthy for you?
Oh yeah, don't trust anybody named Will. They're all jerks.
Yeah.
It was nice to get that moment with Fitz when he was talking to Simmons, and actually have him finally express his anger and frustration at the situation, because he had seemed to be bottling it up and tried to keep a cool head about it this whole time, and it was nice to see that outburst finally.
And I like that it was very, very clear that he wasn't mad at her. Like, he was mad at the situation. Like, I do think it adds more complexity to the relationship of the characters.
It does.
Both, yeah.
And so this kind of addresses some of a bit, I guess, of your criticisms about kind of the love triangle element, just in that it's the way they're handling it, I guess, is decent, you know?
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
handling it. Yeah,
I would
more.
agree. I would agree with that. I'm still concerned. I still kind of wish, for Simmons' sake, um, what her experience at the planet had been more specific to her internal growth and examination as a character, as opposed to introducing an exterior element that's going to become relevant to the plot later on. And character-wise, doesn't really seem to be doing anything other than turning it into a love triangle. I'm still dissatisfied with that. I do think
Hmm.
they're handling the Fitzsimmons material in a really mature way. So I think there's good and bad to it.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I would
So
agree with that.
let's talk about some other elements of this episode. We had everything between Coulson and the head of the ACTU kind of coming to a head with who was it? Is no, it wasn't Mac. Is it Mac
I
that
think
was like
Matt.
questioning Coulson's
Yeah, it was Matt.
commitment at a certain point, and then Coulson's all like, "Oh well, let you in on the plan here. You guys are going to be while I'm showing her around the base, you guys are going to be going into all of her information and
I feel
infiltrating
like
her
that was a really
facility."
good culmination of how they've been acting this season, because they've constantly have been having Daisy and Matt question Coulson on this, and like how far he really trusts Rosalind and if he really can. And through the whole thing, I think because the writers were being so out there with that, I was like, well, obviously Coulson is being savvy. Obviously he is playing a long con on her.
Well, I
So
like
it
that
was,
it wasn't just a long con though. That like he's hopeful, but he's paranoid.
yeah,
Right,
he's,
right,
he's
yeah.
like he
yeah,
wants
and
her to
then
be
I like,
above board, but he's just paranoid
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, yeah. He wants it to work. He wants to be able to trust her, but he knows that he can't fully trust her.
And
He can't.
what I like about their relationship is I think what connects them the most is that they're kind of in this unique position of heading up a spy agency that like no one else can really understand. But at the same time, that exact same facet is what also what keeps them from being able to trust each other. Like there's a certain kind of dramatic irony there, and I think
Yeah.
both characters are uncertain about it, and I think that's what makes it so intriguing.
And then you called it last week, Kat, because it turned out that she wasn't fully aware of what Powers Booth was doing. So like while she was working with him, she is apparently not working with him to the extent that she knows all of his plans or that she's on board with everything he's doing.
Thank goodness. I didn't want her
Yeah.
to turn out to be Hydra. That would have been
Yeah.
predictable. It would have ruined
Yeah.
the whole character. Yeah. I'm glad for that.
Ward also had a pretty badass scene where he was supposed to be left for dead by Powers Booth character and just killed everyone.
Yeah.
I like his airplane scene just because of the
Yeah.
speech he made over the intercom. It was just so calm, and it was just so very much how flight attendants talk, and still all the words were just, but what he's actually saying is rather terrifying. I really liked the delivery
Well, I
of it.
liked when he was whispering in the stewardess's ear that he was flirting with, and you could just see her face like drop into like
That
horror, you
was,
know?
yeah, that was so
Yeah.
well
That was so good. And he was like, thank you for flying the friendly skies with Hydra.
done. That's the kind of psychopathy that just makes Ward like 10 times the character he was.
Yeah. Ward continues to be awesome.
It's all of Marvel's best villains now are on TV, I think.
yeah, right?
Yeah, they
Exactly.
do seem to be struggling. It's true, because I mean, who have we had? Like Loki's great,
Loki's
Loki's
probably the
great.
closest, yeah.
but like yeah, I would agree with that. All the rest of them have been pretty forgettable.
Yeah, can you name any other villain in the movies that you care
Christopher
about?
Eccleston.
Yeah.
The Mandarin. I like the turn on the Mandarin. I
I
liked what
liked
they
the
did with
turn
Yeah.
on it
that.
too, even though I know it caused a lot of upsetting.
It caused a lot of upset. Yeah, I like the turn on the man. That was a neat twist. Turned out Mandarin wasn't really the actual villain of Iron Man 3.
But in the end, that
Oh,
wasn't the making of a great villain. That was just a great twist.
that was just a
Yeah.
great, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It was like Guy Pearce.
Another thing I was going to say I really appreciate about this episode is I think it demonstrated how far this show has come in its presentation of humor. Because first season, I think they tried way too hard and they had lots of one-liners and were really
Oh
cutesy about it.
yeah, it
And
it tried to
then in
have.
this episode, like the humor was a legitimate outgrowth of a character. So having Hunter walk in with like his "Damn the Yanks" T-shirt and his
Yeah, yeah,
username is "God Save the Queen," and he's just, "I'm gonna shove my Britishness in your face," was funny because it was Hunter.
yeah. It
Well,
was
a
like
good example of
exactly.
that. A good example of that wasn't even necessarily in this episode, but this season. I remember they were really forcing the whole like "don't touch Lola" thing with like Coulson and like his obsession with his car and stuff. They were like way overstating all of that. But then like in this season, they had like the little cute moment where Coulson was like checking out the
I
ACTU
love that.
car, and that was a much more subtle way of handling his
Oh
like, car
yeah,
obsession
Yeah. Well,
in a funny way. So
yeah, and Coulson's moments have gotten more subtle too, because I like his claim that his hand has a laser finger, and then at one point Rossman's like, "Does it really have a laser finger?" Like definitely, I think they, instead of the moments all being one-liners, there it's legitimately part of the character. I think they've done a really
yeah. I think the first season they tried to write like a lot of witty, Whedon-esque dialogue, which and it didn't come off, as
it
genuine.
felt unnatural.
Yeah, it felt really
yeah.
unnatural, and I'm glad they moved away from that. It's like just because they have a Whedon producing the show doesn't mean we need to have all that.
And I think as the characters have become more fleshed out, I think it's easier to find humor from them as a result.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like,
Also, adding Hunter to the cast has done a lot for that because I think he's the most consistently funny character on the
Nick
show.
Blood
yes,
killing it.
he is, and it's because he is like naturally funny, like in that way.
Yeah, he's just so obnoxious and he's like an unrepentant bastard, but you just find him so funny that you
Yeah,
don't want him to
exactly.
leave the room. You sigh in exasperation, but you're glad he's around.
Do we have anything else specific? What else happened in this
Oh,
episode?
one other scene also
Later,
I really liked was the
later,
Link and May stuff.
We're down there all talking.
later.
It was a really small part of the episode, but I really liked because I think because it surprised me how May responded, and I liked that she was understanding of him. Also, I just really like the fact that May is so scary that even though Lincoln has superpowers, that doesn't change the fact that even he is scared of her.
Well,
Yeah.
I like the way they did that. Like when she picked that it was going to be him that was going with her, and he was kind of like, what, you know, and everyone was like, okay then, and he was like, wait.
Even people who have superpowers are intimidated by May. That makes me so happy.
And yeah, I do. I also liked that it turned out that she didn't pick him to intimidate him or to like, do anything
Right.
necessarily bad to him, but it was like a genuine feeling of needing to apologize or needing to make it up to him or kind of make right with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely like that. So and Lincoln's just kind of like fitting into the team now. It looks like
Yeah, right.
he's still a little bit of the odd one out, but it's like he's not all like super rebel without a cause all the time now, you know.
Yeah. Let's hope. I hope they flesh him out because I still feel like he doesn't have much of a personality.
Same. Same. We need to flesh Lincoln out. And also, what are they gonna do? What are they doing with that guy they picked up like at the beginning of the season?
Joey?
Like, yeah, we saw him like last episode, but
He's at like some other place now, right?
yeah, he's at
he's
some
training.
Yeah.
training. They haven't done much with that character.
Last we
yet,
saw
but-
him was when everyone was finding out about Andrew.
Yeah.
He could still show up again, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be good. Uh, that pretty much covers it for Agents of Shield, unless either of you guys have anything else you wanted to bring up.
Not really. I think that covers pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So let's go on to The Flash, Season 2, Episode 7, Guerrilla Warfare. This is the return of Zod. Or not Zod, Grodd.
Oh, I was like, wow, I
Wrong
totally
DC
missed
villain.
that part.
Oh, you missed that part, Will? You fell asleep during the episode?
During the part where Zod showed up, yeah.
Yeah. That was the big twist. Grodd unzipped his costume and stuff. It was Michael Shannon from Boardwalk Empire who did it in Man of Steel.
And suddenly the Flash crosses over with Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
It's
it was Gorilla Grodd that was the kind of central villain of this episode. And Will, you pointed out earlier like a little connection between that and what we're going to be talking about later with Jessica Jones.
What? What's the connection?
About Grodd and his abilities and Will?
Like, Grodd can telepathically mind control people.
Oh, just like David Tennant's.
Just like David Tennant, except that David Tennant was a giant gorilla on top of it.
David Tennant is just a purple man.
It's just a purple
Also,
man.
no, actually, I believe that, tell me if I'm wrong, Gorilla Grodd is actually voiced by Powers Booth.
Oh, really? That's
Is he?
interesting.
No, I didn't know
Also, now it connects back to S.H.I.E.L.D.
that. It's all connected.
It's all connected.
They're just in different universes.
It's just in different universes.
I need like one of those like police officer that was kicked off the force but is still relentlessly pursuing a criminal, like boards behind me with all the yarn connecting things.
Yeah, right.
I
But,
think it would just make you an Uber fan, which there are many of us.
but knowing that Grodd can control people to do whatever he wants them to do, instead of getting all scared about it, Cisco just makes fancy headphones and it's all right.
That is so how science and logic works on the
Yeah, exactly.
convenient fixes left and right.
Yes, exactly. Just
All of his
headphones, and you'll be
all of
immune
his
from Grodd.
special gadgets basically have the name DEM and then like a serial number after it because it's all Deus Ex Machina. Everything he makes.
That would be the Flash hanging a lampshade on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I don't know how you two reacted to this episode, but I spent the whole thing absolutely convinced that Barry's dad is going to turn out to be Zoom. Just because
They seem to be playing it in that direction.
right after Zoom disappears, and we
Hold
know
on.
that Zoom wasn't making problems until his dad got out of prison. And he's walking around having these like super suspicious sounding conversations about Zoom. It totally made me think of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. moment when
After this, I wanted to talk to you.
I know that.
Daisy was talking to Andrew about Lash, and I was like, oh, Andrew's gonna turn out to be Lash. This is foreshadowing, and it totally turned out to be true. So I seriously watched this episode, absolutely convinced more than ever that Henry is gonna turn out to be Zoom.
Yeah, Henry shows up conveniently in this episode, and it's like, yeah, he's Zoom. I mean, it's more obvious than ever now.
Yeah, they were playing that up big time. I mean, even like the way if you watch like the previously on segment before the episode, like the way they put in like when he was saying he was gonna leave, was like immediately after the scene where they were showing like Zoom, on the previously on. So it's like totally they're pushing it out. So if it's not him, then it's a big red herring.
Then it's like, because I bet anything that's why he left so abruptly in the premiere, because his departure is so weird, and I bet anything that's connected to it. So
Yeah, his departure was. We talked about that quite a few times. That was just.
Yeah, his departure.
I've seen a lot of people complain about that.
It was the most nonsensical departure ever. It was weird.
They need to get me out of the way. Writers, that is.
Yeah, I just get in your way, What does family do but hold you back? And you don't need family because you have another family who would also hold you back. and I could help out too, just like they do, but I'd be holding you back. So
Right?
while you're confused trying to figure all this out, I'm going to walk out the door. Bye.
Okay, and another moment is a moment in this episode that I literally like guffawed at is Joe says to Iris, "That was a brilliant idea, thinking of calling Barry's dad." I was like, okay. When someone's in emotional distress, thinking of calling up their parents is a good idea, but it's also a very common one. It's not a brilliant one. And I feel like it goes hand in hand with the moment, it was either last week or 2 weeks ago, when Linda described Iris. She told Iris, "Oh, you're totally badass daughter." And I was like, I felt like the writers have like, well, we don't know how to make Iris a good character, so
We'll
gonna
just
keep
have
having
everybody
other
say she's a good
characters
character.
tell her that she's awesome to try to trick the audience into thinking that she's awesome. Gosh, I swear poor Iris is never going to be a good character on this show.
Yeah, they're just gonna tell us she's great instead of have her be great. What else in this episode? Cisco went on his date with the barista.
That's
Oh
right.
yeah.
Barista from Hot Girl Coffee.
You kind of thought she was going to be Hawk Girl, got freaked out.
Took off right at the beginning of their date.
Took off at the beginning of their date.
With the flimsiest of excuses and just left.
And they came back at the end with like a whole John Cusack 80s like moment. Yeah. Say anything. They even had like freaking
they even played the exact same song.
They even played the exact same song. Yeah. I know. It was so corny.
It was all about 80s reference night because then they watched The Princess Bride.
Yeah. They watched The Princess Bride. And it's like, I don't know why this is a thing. It's like, she's going to leave for another show and she's going to be with some other guy, so.
They have to set her up on this series.
Yes, they have to set her up on this series.
Before she can be on that other show.
Yeah, It all seems so pointless. It's obvious setup for something else, and it's like, plot-wise, as far as Arrow goes, or Flash goes, it's like, not really, yeah.
So, also through this episode, we had Barry Allen taking one episode to recover from his back injury. He basically pulled a Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, yeah, he was
Barry has the excuse that he does have accelerated healing.
He has that Deus Ex Machina.
Bruce Wayne does not.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Bruce Wayne does not. Yeah, right. But Bruce Wayne is the Batman, so.
It's a comic book universe.
Yeah.
You gotta go with it.
I don't know. It's less excusable in Dark Knight Rises because it's a comic book universe, but it was supposed to be a more grounded and realistic comic book universe, you know.
What I think was so stupid about Barry's recovery, though, is like how they're developing the kind of relationship between him and Patty. And they're like, you know, the whole secrecy thing. It's getting back to Smallville style storytelling, with like the, you know, finding a way to keep a secret, and him going, "Oh no, don't come visit me. You don't need to bring me your homemade chicken soup. I love the canned stuff." And then later on, Joe's all, he hates the canned stuff. It's like so obvious. It's just
really
too on the nose.
I hope she knows sooner rather than later, and I would love it if she even figured it out on her own, which Iris was too much of a dingbat to do.
No, what'll happen is she'll find out, and then Iris will say, you know, "I found out before," and she'll go like, "Iris, you're really amazing."
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I really like her character, so I want them to find an excuse to stick her around. Because in terms of, like, female characters, I already think she's a better character than Caitlin and Iris combined. And I don't want her to turn out to be evil, and I want her to be brought into Team Flash. And I want her to get to do things other than be Barry's love interest.
Yeah.
Because she's a fun character.
So Flash continues to be kind of like cheesy, brain-dead fun for the most part. Anything else to talk about in this episode? Do either of you have anything else to bring up? No? Okay then. Well, let's move on to the show I've been wanting to talk about this whole podcast. I had to look up all of these episodes again for the other ones because I completely forgot what happened in all of them. Because I mean, we're only going to talk about the first two episodes, but I watched the entire thing already.
Is that a good sign? Is that like you couldn't wait and you were excited and you watched the whole thing?
I wanted to binge it from the beginning. I'm so off of the whole like live TV thing because DVR, all that kind of stuff,
Sure.
video on demand. You never do that anymore. I kind of felt like, I really want to be there as everybody else is watching this. So I started watching this at midnight on Friday, like when it first came out, and I sat through 8 episodes before I stopped.
Wow.
And then there wasn't much left to finish. I just finished it the next day. But yeah, we're gonna dive into like the first 2 episodes, and first off, just general impressions right off the bat. I like this better than Daredevil.
Wow.
Even
That's
after
great.
just like the first 2 episodes, I felt that way though. It's just a much more personal story than Daredevil is, which I really like. That's also, as it goes on, becomes a little bit of the show's weakness. It's one of those things where you think like this show probably would have worked better if it was like 10 episodes rather than like 13. It could have condensed a little bit and it would have worked a little bit better. But we're not going to get into that. We're just going to talk about like the first 2 episodes, which are AKA Ladies Night and AKA Crush Syndrome. All of the episode titles have AKA in the beginning of them. But
I'm
yeah.
glad they dropped the AKA from the name of the series. I think that just made it confusing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Because now we don't know. There's no context for why everything's named AKA unless you're like in the know. Yeah.
So we got to meet Jessica Jones as a character and kind of get like the first thing the series does. It kind of just gives you an impression of what she's like as a person, and she goes around what she does. I really like the kind of film noir aspect that they're kind of taking with the series, even in the music. The music has like little saxophone elements and stuff that give it that kind of like Night in the City, like you practically expect somebody to say, "She walked into my she walked into my office. She was all legs." It's like that kind of that noir-esque thing it's there and it's very apparent. And it's just how kind of miserable she is and how she just wallows in it. She's just constantly drinking. And I like the perspective that they give to this character. And even though she's just miserable all the time, she's also really funny. She's like Veronica Mars miserable.
Actually, she does kind of make me think of Veronica Mars, which is funny because Kristen Ritter was on Veronica Mars.
Yeah. Playing a very non-Veronica Mars-y character. But yeah, what do you think, Kat? Just basic general impressions so far.
I don't know. I actually have a confession to make, which is that I never finished Daredevil. Because I watched 2 episodes and it didn't really appeal to me at all. And then everyone went, "It's the greatest thing ever," and then it appealed to me even less. So I never went back to it. And so I watched the pilot for this and went, "That's why I never finished Daredevil." Because you're absolutely right. I completely agree. It's very noir. And it's a style that doesn't necessarily appeal to me very much. Like it reminds me of, if you were to compare the Daredevil, Jessica Jones with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I would compare Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as like the blockbuster, the flashy blockbuster, and Daredevil and Jessica Jones are like the I don't know, like the Warner
pulpy
Terrence Malick, more indie film. And I'm more drawn to blockbusters. So, I watched the second episode and I liked it more. I think maybe it helped to have lower expectations. Like, I do like that she is this totally misanthropic individual. Really playing that up in the second episode. And I can appreciate that. I think it works well for her. So, I'm still struggling with seeing David Tennant as a villain. And that's not just like that's not just a really superficial thing. It's like I have been so deeply invested in David Tennant characters in the past that it is going to be really hard for me to overcome that and not want to just instinctively root for him. So that is going to be
as you see more of him, that he carries himself very differently in this role. So I think that helps.
Okay.
Like his posture is different, you know, and I think that plays a big part in kind of separating him a little bit from his past characters.
Sure.
But Will, what do you think? Your overall general impressions of the first 2 episodes?
I like it. I think it's good. Obviously, Jessica Jones is a very cynical, very sour character. When you meet her, she's not very friendly person. David Tennant certainly is very creepy. He does creepy really well. In fact, I think everybody in the show really nails their roles. I mean, the actor they got playing Luke Cage does a perfect Luke Cage, you know. Kristen Ritter, perfect Jessica Jones.
And they have great chemistry right off the bat. Luke Cage and Jessica. Amazing chemistry.
Amazing chemistry. I mean, the casting, the acting in this is fantastic.
I was gonna.
They got a great cast for this.
I was gonna make a joke on Twitter. I never ended up doing it, but I was gonna make the joke like that. You know, like the first scene where they put Jessica Jones and Luke Cage together, where they first talked. I'm like, they just talked for about 3 seconds, and they already have like more chemistry than this Iris, like, you know, like Barry that they've pushed for like, you know, 2 years now. It's like
it does go to show the importance of casting.
Mm-hmm. Also, you know, one thing I wanted to note as far as like, you know, acting and performance on this, the actress who plays Hope, who is the kind of the other girl that, you know, the parallel girl to Jessica that was being victimized by Kilgrave. And a lot of it's that kind of parallel relationship between Hope and Jessica and the similar experiences they've gone through. Man, she's really pulls it off on the show.
Yeah, that first episode, that moment when Jessica finds her in the elevator and she shot her parents and she just looks at her and says, "Smile." That was amazing.
That was like probably the most amazing moment of the 2 episodes, was just that ending there. Because, you know, even I didn't expect that, you know, like it looked like it was going to like be a happy ending, and then it totally did a 180, and wow.
Well, just even before that, like before the elevator door closed, there was like a moment where Jessica realized something was wrong, and it was like so tense. All of a sudden, it was like, oh my god, you know?
Yeah, and that was like such a tense moment in like the first 2 episodes. Definitely the most tense moment.
I didn't expect the series to turn so much on that, but actually that, to me, maybe that was part of the pleasant surprise of the second episode, was realizing that that's going to be the setup for the series, is using this parallel story of Hope and Jessica trying to get her off and stuff. And like you were saying, Tyson, like this is a more personal story for her than it was for Daredevil. So I can appreciate that.
It's like initially after Jessica realizes what's going on, her first instinct is to just run as far away as possible, even to the point of trying to use Hope's credit card to buy a plane ticket to like China before it's like, you know, it's rejected. So it's like her first instinct isn't, oh, this guy's back, I gotta stop him. It's like, I gotta get as far away from this guy as possible.
Fight or flight kicked in, and it was flight. She was like, I'm out.
Like, I am out.
I like that, though, because I always like it when we see characters making the decision that we don't want them to make, and especially because that's oftentimes what would be the first instinctive decision, and then I like when they are able to turn around and say, no, I'm going to make the better decision, because I think that's more realistic. So I like that she panicked first, walked out to the taxi, was going to go, and then turn around and decided to stand her ground.
Well, the moment that she realized that this was all connected to the Purple Man, to Kilgrave, was like crazy too. And we talked about like a tense moment, just when she was like, when she saw like the restaurant and like it all kind of started clicking in her head, like, oh no, this can't be, you know, and she started freaking out, you know, and then you could see like everything coming together. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is. You could see how personal the story is to her and how it's going to go from there. Um, let's talk about Luke Cage, because he's going to be the character for the next Netflix series, and we got a lot of Luke Cage through this. Mostly in the second episode, we got a decent amount of him. We talked about his chemistry with Jessica Jones right off the bat. I'm really liking Luke Cage already. I thought that the bar fight was amazing, and I loved how like almost bored he was. Like he just be kind of like, you know, flicking. He just kind of like flick his wrist and hit somebody and then go flying off. It's just like so effortlessly, just didn't care, you know.
See, that moment was actually fun for the surprise for me because I'm not familiar at all with these comic characters at all, and I wasn't aware that that was Luke Cage until that moment. And like I had heard the name Luke Cage 100 times, but I know nothing about him outside of that. So when she walks in and she's gonna save him, and then he's just like very easily handling himself, it clicked up my mind, and I'm like, oh, cool. That was a fun little surprise for me as a newbie.
That's cool. Yeah, that was probably my favorite moment from the first two episodes, just because it was so funny, just how bored and uninterested he looked. It actually really reminded me. There's this anime I've been watching now called One Punch Man, and the whole story is about this guy that he trains really hard to become like a hero, and he wants to be one. And his goal is I want to be so strong that I can take out enemies with one punch. And he reaches that goal. But because he's like there's no challenge to anything anymore, he's become like so apathetic about everything, and he just looks so like bland all the time. He's like, just just doesn't care about anything, and it's kind of like this weird plan like that, like how Dr. Manhattan was in Watchmen. This idea that like you kind of like lose emotion because you're like so far advanced from everything else, you know. Sure. But it's like on a pure power level thing, so. In like a fighting thing, it's like he had no investment, like Luke Cage, back to Luke Cage, had no investment in this fight. It was just like, no, whatever, go away. So yeah, I absolutely loved that scene. We also got to see a huge aspect of Jessica Jones, and it's something that continues on with not just her character, but with multiple characters as the show goes on, but there's a lot of sexuality in this Netflix series, this Netflix Marvel series, more so than like in probably any other Marvel property we've seen so far.
Yeah, which actually I'll admit, I think for me is a big relief. That was one of my one positive responses to Daredevil, is I was worried that Marvel being owned by Disney, that Disney would want them to sanitize everything, and it's very clear from both of these series that that is very not the case. But Marvel is still has the freedom. Like obviously they make the big flashy blockbusters that are fun for the whole family, but it is nice that they are also still doing the adult stuff as well.
It is nice that they are treating the Marvel brand as an all ages brand and catering to fans of the brand at every age level.
And they're still connected. That's what I like so much about it.
Yeah, they're still connected. Instead of just flatly stating, this is a brand for children, we can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is what I was worried Disney would try to do.
Yeah.
They've been doing it right with this so far, and word is that Punisher, who's being played by the actor who played Shane in The Walking Dead, for season 2 of Daredevil. They've been saying early test footage coming back and stuff, like people have been seeing it at Marvel, have been hyping it up and saying, "Oh, you can't wait to see it. You're gonna love it," you know.
Oh, that's great.
So they've been hyping it up big time. They're like, "This is one of those like off the page, right to the screen moments," you know.
Here's one moment that does make me just a little bit sad. Is I read that the series creator, she said she was originally going to use Carol Danvers as the best friend instead of Hellcat. And
yeah, Captain Marvel.
As cool as it is that Hellcat gets to be on this, there is a small part of me that's like, Oh, I am dying to see Carol Danvers on screen. I'm dying to
Yeah.
see her realize that.
But there's a good reason why they didn't, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
because,
absolutely. I don't disagree with it. Like, and I can't wait to see her movie. It's just I watch it and go, oh, I'm dying to see Captain Marvel.
Right, right. Exactly. Captain
Yeah.
Marvel would be amazing.
It's because Marvel needs a really strong female character to bring out. That's like, because I mean, you have like Black Widow, but she's not really a superhero. You know what I mean? She's not really like in the same way as her characters. And Marvel doesn't really have. I mean, probably most of their really strong female characters are probably connected to the mutants stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say
which is not.
Which is not X-Men. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Or they're like these little sub-characters like Spider-Woman, where it's like it's a character, but it's a lesser female version of this iconic male character. Yeah. So Mrs. Marvel's like their real shot at like making a very strong female character that could work as a movie, So of course they're gonna.
I can't wait.
So yeah, let's see what else. We got to see a little bit of Kilgrave's creepiness in these first two episodes, especially in the second episode. First off, I wanted to say I really like the way that they start bringing in like purple hues when she's gonna have like these little kind of, I don't know, like acid flashback-esque moments of like imagining that he's there or something, and like you'll see kind of like the lighting kind of turns purplish before that happens,
Right.
Which is a kind of cool little touch I like. But the big thing we got with Kilgrave is, and we saw the beginning of it in the trailer, which is when he walks up to a guy and says, you're going to invite me into your apartment. And the guy just kind of pauses for a second and says, yes, come in. And what was so creepy in this scene was the kids, where he sees the little boy and he's like, children should be seen, not heard. Change that. They shouldn't be seen either. Get in the closet. And if that wasn't creepy enough, then the little girl stands up to go use the bathroom, and he's like, no, you go in the closet too. She says, I have to go to the bathroom. Just go in the closet. And you hear him crying, and then
at this moment and say it does remind me of Arrested Development and the school where children should be neither seen nor heard. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Oh, it's just so creepy, though, because the kids are crying. They shut the door. You see, the pee coming out from under the door because that's what the girl was basically told to do. And it's just, it's like a whole, it really brings you into the idea of, like, how horrid Kilgrave is as a person, that he's not just, like, dominating these people and like living in their space and having them serve him, but he's just like, yeah, you get in the closet. I don't care about any kind of human rights, like, oh, go to the bathroom. He could easily with his power say, well, then go and then go into the closet. But no, just do it in the closet. I don't care.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of aspect of him. It just shows like how he's so singularly focused on himself.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's no reasonable anything with any of the R characters. It's like if they're not immediately beneficial to him, then he's uninterested, and we got to see also a part of that was that we get to meet one of his victims from when he was supposed to have died, when Jessica thought he had died, and he was crushed and he was taken away by a paramedic. And we see this paramedic after on a dialysis machine because Kilgrave took both of his kidneys. He could have just taken one, but he wanted to be whole.
Right, exactly.
And we get that, like, the whole moment with him just being like, kill me, like trying to write it out to her. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, killed me. That was a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah, and crazy moms. They're doing a lot with crazy characters on this show too. Let's talk about the neighbors.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, the neighbors. Oh geez, yeah.
Where Jessica's at first like, I don't want to be involved with any of your kinky stuff or whatever, and then he's like, she's my sister, and he's like,
I was like,
it's going like, okay.
ew.
Hey, incest is everywhere on TV these days.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, right. Really. There's that. The drug addict. Oh, and they keep referencing her broken door that she breaks at the beginning of the series.
Yeah, that was a cool scene too. The guy's like just kind of couldn't. She's talking about how people can't handle the news when they get it, even though they're asking for the news.
Yeah, right.
They get it, they can't handle it, and he's just like, you see like their shadows, and he like grabs her, and she just right through the window. So yeah, it was a cool scene. See, is there anything else to talk about? Oh, well, we got to see Jessica's friend was training, or he had a little secret training room, which was cool. And we got to the ending moment of the episode 2 with Luke taking a buzzsaw to his abdomen.
Yeah.
To reveal, like, his secret to her so that they can kind of get into a dialogue. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about with Jessica Jones?
I think that's all.
I think that's it.
So yeah, I'm excited to watch more. We're not going to be back next week because all the other shows are on hiatus. But when it comes back, we're going to have a really exciting show because we're going to be talking about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we're going to be talking about the Flash and not Jessica Jones, the Flash and Arrow crossover, and we're going to talk about more episodes of Jessica Jones. But right now, this is going to be it for Kat because we're going to talk about Arrow, and she is not up to date.
All right.
So, thank you for joining us, Kat.
Bye.
Bye, Kat.
Okay, now it's just Will and I, and it is time to talk about Arrow. So I kind of wish this was a really exciting episode of Arrow, since we just go off of some kind of interesting conversation and right on to, like, it's just the two of us now, and it's like happens to be one of the not as great episodes.
Yeah, this was not a good episode of Arrow. I actually kind of blanking out what happened. Oh wait, they broke into the place to get that serum or something for Ray so he could figure out the ghosts based on their tooth. I don't know.
What they ended up finding out was that Diggle's brother is still alive.
Yeah, that was the big focus point. There was like a lot of drama over that, like Diggle not wanting.
Where Diggle's like immediately like, I read in a file that he's a bastard, so I'm not going to help him no matter what. There might be another side to the story. There can't be. I read a file.
Drama. I read a file. I was like,
all over. I'm just going to write him out of my life forever just because I read a file.
There's some stuff with David.
It also said he died, even though he didn't actually die because he's alive.
Yeah, right. He didn't die because he's alive.
So, like, right off the bat, you're on that kind of like, oh god, they're just pushing this drama way too hard, and Diggle getting on Oliver's case because Oliver is putting family first.
Yeah.
Even though it's not his family.
It's not his family. It's like.
Well, that's your problem, Oliver. You always think that family is a good thing. And it's like, you would have said the same thing before you read that file.
Yeah, no, exactly. Shut up, Diggle.
Then we had the other kind of thing that I thought was kind of weird, which was Thea getting hit on in a restaurant when she was out with Alex.
Yeah.
And then her flipping out and beating the guy nearly to death.
Yep, in front of
Alex. And they kind of just barely address that afterwards. And it's like, it might come up later, but it'll be like a hurdle that they have to get themselves over. It won't be like as damaging as it should be. Because that's a pretty significant thing to happen in public, and they're going to bury that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, overall, I'd say kind of a disappointing episode. of Arrow. In what's been a not necessarily that great season, still I'd say better than season 3. But yeah, I mean, you just want them to get back on like the season 2 track of quality, and they're not there. Let's talk about the flashbacks, though. So we'd mentioned before that these flashbacks felt a little off, but then more around when they started bringing in like Constantine, they were able to add an element to his flashbacks that was more interesting. You know, that there was some kind of hunt for mystical stuff going on this island.
Yeah, flashbacks have actually been pretty good this season.
Yeah, they've definitely improved, especially since then. But one of the ways in which they really improved is that they're kind of like raising the stakes on it with, setting up Oliver to have like killed a guy. You find out that guy is the brother of this girl, and now he's had to tell this girl that her brother's dead, but he hasn't told her that he's the one that killed him, which is just like a ticking time bomb now.
Yeah, right.
So it's adding a little bit of tension to. So like I'm more invested in Island flashback stories than I have been since season 2.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, I think the fact that it's better is because the fact that we actually are back on the island.
Mm-hmm.
China or some.
We have to go back.
We have to go back. I don't know what was happening with the flashbacks last season, but yeah, this is definitely much more focused, a much more interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like it has anything to do with the main plot. Or wait, no, I mean like the magical stuff will tie back to Damien Dark in some way.
Yeah, it's got to.
Yeah, because now they're hinting that there's something magical about this island in addition to everything else.
Definitely. But yeah, I mean, do you have anything else to say about this episode? Do you remember anything else about this episode?
Not really. I
feel about the same. They ended up, we can say they ended up getting Diggle's brother back.
Yep.
They have him locked up in a cage.
Locked up in a cage. He hasn't said much except to confirm everything in the file is true, I guess. You still don't know the deal. He may be brainwashed. It seemed like that. Other than that, Felicity keeps giving Ray crap about not wanting to announce he's alive. It's like
Ray's all, I just want to be a hermit.
Yeah, Ray's like, I just want to be a hermit. And Felicity's like, no. It's like, Felicity, stop getting on people's cases about stuff. It's not really your business. Stop it.
Nosenicity.
Yeah, I know, right? Nosenicity, exactly.
So yeah, that kind of brings this to an end then. So hopefully Arrow improves. Arrow should be at least a lot better next week, or not next week, but the week after. Next week, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Flash, Arrow, none of them are going to be on. And we aren't going to be here either. But the week after, every episode looks really good. First up, we're going to have more Jessica Jones to talk about, which is more good stuff. But then the next upcoming episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., if you saw like what's kind of coming up, looks really good. And then we have the Flash Arrow crossover again, which, hey, if it's anything like last year's, that was the singular highlight, really, of last year's Arrow. So we'll have to see. Be interesting. And I think it's just one more episode after that before the mid-season finales for both of those, or for all three of those, I believe.
Yeah.
So we're getting there. We're right up to that point where it's going to be kind of off the air for a bit. When that happens, we're going to stop doing these videos for a bit. We're probably going to come back, not when Agent Carter comes back, but when Legends of Tomorrow starts up, and Agent Carter have already been back for a while, and then we'll be talking about both of those.
All right, awesome.
So yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. You can check us out at tventhusiast.com. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, subscribe. Check out all of our kind of channels. All that information you can get on our website, tventhusiast.com. You can follow me on Twitter, @TysonGifford. You can follow Will on Twitter, @VoxelHero. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and good night.
Good night.